Andrew Peak, Deroy Murdock, and Dan Bongino. Andrew, let me start with you. It's absolutely amazing because this is starting to widen out here. We're starting to get clear evidence of perhaps a very sophisticated network that's been lurking for a long time. And one of the issues that I find it's really striking is how young some of these people are. In fact, I read an article about a 16-year-old recruiter out there. I mean, that underscores the challenges that we face.
That is who these people target. You know, in mosques and madrasas, they find people who are alienated for whatever reason. They're angry. Many are orphans, and they give them money and an entree into kind of a society, and then slowly radicalize their beliefs. It's a tragedy.
Deroy?
Well, look, I think one thing we've learned from this is that very often when you hear about this being a so-called lone wolf, I prefer the term lone rat attack, we now see this man, this killer was not alone. We've got 11 people apparently under arrest. I think a couple of them have been let go. But you find these ongoing networks that often are attached to somebody who we early on think is operating by himself. And as you say, a lot of these young people are being targeted on social media, Facebook, a lot of these other areas. So this is another front we have, the sort of a digital front that we need to use to defeat these people, obliterate them.
Dan, it's interestingly not unlike MS-13 or someone like that. You know, these nefarious organizations going after young people who, to Andrew's point, may feel at a certain point in their young lives to be dissatisfied or not attached to a system or victimized in some way and capitalizing on it.
Yeah, you read my mind, Charles. I'm actually in the middle of a deep dive for my third book doing research on presidential assassins, political assassinations, school shooters, and gang members. And they all have that exact same thing in common, which ISIS has sadly been able to leverage now. Reaching out to those people isolated from communities who seemingly don't have any kind of meaning to their lives and giving them some meaning, however tragic and horrific that meaning is, through suicide bombing or whatever it may be. So your comparison to gangs is an accurate one based on the psychological profile.
So, Andrew, how do we combat that from an intelligence community point of view, understanding that the radicalization process in of itself, it doesn't happen overnight. Perhaps the seeds of it began from birth when someone in the family, even though they've been rescued by the West, this kid grew up in England, you know, our attackers, a lot of them grew up in America, even though they were rescued perhaps from rubble or despair or famine in their own old countries, they despise this country. Someone in their family from day one has ridiculed America, and then something happens to them that flips the switch.
Right. Well, we have to be really careful about criminalizing thought and criminalizing political belief. So what we focus on is the operation.
Can we surveil it, though? If we see the morphing of the guy who worked next to you or the kid in your class, hey, in 9th grade he was a great kid. By 12th grade, I don't know, he was telling me stories about coming back from Libya and he had a machine gun. I mean, can we find a way to at least tag it?
Yeah. No, and that comes down to not necessarily a police function, but the Islamic community function. You know, that has to be something with the people who know these kids best on the alert, as they were in this case, for things that were going a little weird. And then we can identify when that person potentially becomes violent.
Deroy, I know everyone who knows this stuff inside and out says we're in for a long, entrenched war because it's an ideological war. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I think this is going to go on for a long time. I wish it would wrap up sooner. But I think, again, we have to be very realistic about this. And a lot of people are living in a fantasy land, such as the judges on 4th Circuit who attacked President Trump's restrictions on travel. I think they said something like this policy is, I believe the term was dripping with religious animus or something like that. There have been a lot of people arrested with ties to Libya, which is one of the 6 countries on the travel restriction list. And I think looking back on it, I think the British probably wish that they'd been a little more vigilant about people coming back from Libya. They might have caught this guy before he wiped out 22 people and injured about 60 more.
Yeah.
And by the way, the investigation at this point has to go to Libya. I mean, the Libyan authorities have said that this guy, the bomber, came to Libya and learned how to make bombs from the internet. On the face of it, that's preposterous. Clearly, he had some contact with ISIS operational personnel who taught him how to create these fairly advanced nail bomb suicide vests. That's not a common weapon.
Yeah, well, they arrested his father and his brother in Libya, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks a lot, guys. Well, pre-holiday trading, of course.